Trent's death a few days ago caused an uproar. No one knew who the man in the ghost mask was, but Alex knew that it was James, the Black Dragon of the Southern Plains. James asked, "How's the partnership going with Eternality?" "All good, Mr. Caden. Terminate the partnership. Tell the Callahans that Celestial will only work with Thea. Now that Thea is no longer part of the family, the partnership is terminated. As for the rumors between you and Thea, sort it out yourself. I don't want Thea to be in trouble due to those rumors." "Of course. I'll get it done right now." Alex took a deep breath. After he hung up, he made the necessary arrangements at once. He told whoever was in charge of dealing with the Callahans to terminate their partnership. At the Callahans, at the same time, the current executive chairman of Eternality, Howard Callahan, rushed in. He shouted, "Dad, something's happened." Lex raised an eyebrow. "Howard, why are you still behaving like a child at this age? How am I supposed to pass the torch to you? Can our family truly be part of the upper class?" "I hear you, Dad, but Celestial Group has terminated our partnership. They even said that." Lex shook, standing up abruptly. What did you say?" Howard lost his confidence. He hung his head. Quietly, he said, "Celestial terminated our partnership. Now, several trucks are waiting at our factory to transport the raw materials back." Lex fell onto the couch heavily. Sweat beaded his wrinkled face. Working with Celestial was the Callahans' best opportunity to rise through the ranks. Now that Celestial had terminated the partnership with Eternality, the Callahans would lose their chance at becoming an upper-class family. What else did Celestial say? "Spit it out." Lex was so angry he thumped his cane against the floor. Howard said, "Celestial's chairman Alex Yates said he would only work with Thea. With Thea gone, he will never work with us. Then why are all of you still standing here? Go and get Thea now." Lex picked up his cane and started whacking Howard, Tommy, and the other Callahans who were present. All of them left hurriedly to call and locate Thea. 9 Dragons Street, Common Clinic. Thea was awake. She sat on the bed, propping her head on her knees and hugging her calves. Quietly, she stared into space. James sat beside her, trying to cheer her up. He told her jokes but she remained silent, never saying a word. Ads by PubFuture. Just then, her phone started ringing. She did not answer it. James glanced at it, noticing that it was Howard. He knew what was going on at once and promptly ended the call. The Callahans could wait. Who was it? Thea twisted around to look at James. Her eyes were red and swollen, tears still pooling in them. She looked nothing like her old spirited self. That was Howard. Oh. Thea uttered a single syllable. Right now, she felt dead inside. She did not seem to care about anything. "Thea, do you really want to go home? Looking at how the Callahans are treating you, I don't think it's a terrible loss if you don't go back," James said. To be frank, he did not want Thea to return either. "Go back? Can I still go back there?" Thea mumbled to herself, shaking her head. Listlessly, she said, "I can never go back. I'm cursed. I've caused so much trouble for my family. Now, grandfather has cast me out. Even mom doesn't want me anymore." Thea's phone started ringing again. James grabbed the phone and held it out to her, asking, "Do you want to take it?" Thea took the phone and answered the call. Howard's anxious voice sounded through the phone. "Thea, where are you? Tell me, I'm coming to pick you up." Thea trembled. Her eyes lit up instantly. Quickly, she said, I'm at Common Clinic on 9 Dragons Street." Excitedly, she hugged James, crying tears of joy. "Jamie, Uncle's picking me up. I'm going home. I'm going home." Looking at how happy Thea was, James's mood lifted as well. "Jamie, I'm going home. I'm going home." Thea could not stop cheering, just like a little girl whose timeout session was over. James did not say much. He merely hugged her tightly. Once Howard learned where Thea was, he drove to 9 Dragons Street. Some of his family went along, including his children Tommy and Megan, as well as Tommy's wife Yvonne Lewis. As Howard had always been the executive chairman of Eternality, he drove a pretty swanky car. It was a BMW 7 Series worth millions. In the car, Tommy complained, "What is grandfather doing? How could he allow Thea to come back? Dad, once Thea returns, you will no longer be the executive chairman. We can't let Thea come home." His wife Yvonne agreed. "Tommy's right. If she's the executive chairman, how will we benefit from the company? How did Thea even get to know the chairman of Celestial? Megan interrupted, rumor has it that Thea is Alex's lover. Howard cut everyone off, saying, that's enough now. We have to take Thea home and secure the partnership with Celestial Group. The order is worth $100 million. We'll make a net profit of $20 million if we make it work. Soon, they arrived at the entrance of Common Clinic. All of them exited the car. Thea was over the moon since Howard told her that he was coming to pick her up himself. She was already waiting for him outside. As soon as she saw Howard's car, she grabbed James's hand excitedly. Look, it's Uncle. It really is. Jamie, I'm going home. Yes, you're going home. James smiled. As long as Thea was happy, he was happy too. After Howard disembarked, he grinned widely, saying, Thea, Dad has told me to take you home. Everyone else's faces darkened when they saw her. She was the curse that almost destroyed the entire Callahan family. Only God's protection prevented that from happening. Arrogantly, Tommy said, Thea, my dad showered you in praise to persuade grandfather. You should be thanking my dad on your knees. Thank you, Uncle, Thea said, preparing to kneel. However, James grabbed her and pulled her up before she could do so. Jamie, what are you doing? Thea looked annoyed. Tommy got angry too. Coldly, he said, James, why aren't you kneeling before the future head of the family? Where are your manners? Kneel. James asked mildly. To him, he praised Thea, did he? Bullshit. If Celestial hadn't terminated the partnership with the Callahans, would you even be here? Go home. Tell Lex that Thea would not be returning. Thea was about to rebuke James, but after what he said, she asked, Jamie, what's this about Celestial terminating the partnership with our family? James explained, I just watched the news. Alex Yates held a press conference and terminated the partnership with the Callahans. He said that he would only work with the Callahans if you were there. Since you're no longer a Callahan, Celestial is terminating the partnership. They're panicking now, and that is why they're in such a hurry to take you home. After she found out, Thea felt hurt. She thought that grandfather had truly loved her. Who knew that he only wanted her home because of the partnership? She almost burst into tears again. James just took Thea's arm, guiding her toward the clinic. Howard panicked. Quickly, he said, Thea, you must come home. Think of how old Dad is. He can't take any more surprises. Do you really want Dad to make this trip himself before you agree to come home? Thea's heart softened. Remembering that grandfather was almost 80, she stopped and looked at James. James knew that Thea cared about her family's opinion the most. Over the past 10 years, she had been looked down upon. She desperately wished for her family's acknowledgement and approval. Thea, do you want to go back? Thea nodded lightly. Yes. James looked at Howard and his family, still standing at the entrance. Mildly, he said, Thea will return under one condition. Kneel and beg her to. James. Tommy got angry at once, a vein pulsing on his face. You have no authority in the family. Thea didn't even say anything. Who are you to make these demands? James said, if you won't kneel, have Lex come personally. Otherwise, she won't be returning. Thea pulled on James's sleeve gently, telling him to stop talking. They were a family after all, and she did not want things to be awkward. Thea, you're too soft-hearted. Since they're at your mercy, they'd grant all your requests. Really? Of course. Think about it. With Celestial terminating the partnership, it's their loss. They need you. Just tell them what you want. Thea had an idea. Her thoughts had been muddled for the past few days, but what James said reminded her of something. All these years, the entire family had looked down upon her dad. He had no standing in the family at all. Even though he was the manager, he owned no shares. Her parents had argued countless times over this matter. She thought about it and said, I'll come home if grandfather transfers 10% of Eternality's shares to my dad. If he disagrees, I guess I won't be going home. Also, he has to kneel. Thea pointed at Tommy. Over the years, Tommy had mocked her and caused trouble for her endlessly. Even during family banquets, he was always reproaching her dad. What? Tommy widened his eyes. Smack. Howard smacked Tommy on the head. He roared, kneel and apologize to Thea. Dad, are you crazy? You want me to kneel before her? Tommy shouted. Howard slapped him. At the same time, he gave Tommy a look. Under his breath, he said, kneel. Do you want Benjamin to get the shares? Tommy finally understood. He threw himself onto the ground, putting on a miserable face. Thea, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have treated you that way. I promise I will never say a bad word about you ever again. Please come home. Grandfather will be turning 80 in a few days. We should reunite as a family." Before Thea could say anything, James said, "No. Thea has said that she will only go home if you agree to the share transfer. Otherwise, she won't be going anywhere. Henry, shut the doors. We're closed today." After that, he entered the clinic with Thea in tow. Henry walked over and pulled down all the roller shutters. In the clinic, Thea looked worried. "Jamie, do you think grandfather will make the transfer?" Confidently, James said, "As long as you don't return now, he will. You can't give in this time." Thea smiled in relief, saying, "With the shares, Mom will finally stop looking down on Dad, and he will have a better standing in the family." "Thank you, Jamie." James cradled her face, saying, "Why are you thanking me? This has nothing to do with me. You should be thanking Alex." Thea was confused. She did not even know Celestial's chairman, Alex. Why was he being so nice to her? At the Callahans, Lex saw Howard and his family, but Thea was nowhere to be found. His wrinkly face darkened. Angrily, he shouted, "Where's Thea? Why didn't you bring her home?" Megan looped her arm through his immediately. "Grandfather, calm down. Please hear me out. Thea has crossed the line. She asked all of us to kneel, which we did, but she still refused to come home. She even requested that you transfer 10% of the group's shares to Benjamin. Also, she said that you're just a biased old man, since everyone else in the family owns some shares except for her family." Lex turned green with anger. Hurriedly, she said, "Grandfather, they're not my words. Thea said all of that. How dare she?" Lex was furious. Viciously, he said, "Just because she knows Alex Yates, she's behaving as if she owns the world. She doesn't even respect me anymore." Tommy exaggerated the story as he recounted how they went to pick Thea up. He told Lex all about how they knelt before Thea, how she ridiculed them, and how she insulted Lex. On the way back, Howard and his family had come up with a plan. One thing was for sure. Thea would be returning. Once she was back, she would be in power. None of them wanted that. However, if Thea did not return, the Callahans would sustain heavy losses. Howard and his family had decided to slander Thea. Thea had made a mistake that almost ended their bloodline. On top of what just happened, she would not get much power even if she returned. Lex fumed, his breath getting shorter and shorter. He leaned against the couch, gasping for breath. Using his cane to point at Howard, he said angrily, "Make the transfer. Since this is her condition for returning, so be it. Get her to call Alex immediately." Lex might have been old, but he was still alert. Only with Thea's return would they be able to secure the partnership with Celestial once more, taking their business to the next level. At Common Clinic, Thea looked at James uncertainly. "Jamie, why do you think Alex is being so nice to me? I don't even know him. First, he invited me to his office personally. Now that I've been cast out of the family, he terminated the partnership. Tell me, does this have anything to do with you?" James knew the cat was out of the bag. Smiling, he said, "You're right. I knew it. Why would Alex be so respectful toward me? It is because of you," Thea realized. Ads by PubFuture. James said, "I'm an orphan, and I was pretty skillful as a soldier. I saved Alex's life once, so he owed me a favor. Alex was repaying me with the partnership agreement and the incident today. We owe each other nothing now. Thank you." James took Thea's hand in his. "We're family. Don't mention it. Also, how are you so skilled in medicine?" Thea looked at James. Her husband was full of mysteries. James smiled as he explained, "As Kensington is the capital of medicine, it hosts many doctors. The director of the orphanage where I grew up was a doctor, so I learned a thing or two from him." "Just a thing or two?" Thea narrowed her eyes at him. She knew how serious her injuries were. Even with the latest technologies in the aesthetic industry, there was no coming back from being disfigured completely. James had healed her in 10 days. There were also new injuries on her face from a few days ago. Her face was still bandaged with gauze, but she could feel that the wounds were healing. "Just a thing or two. He's your savior and an excellent doctor." James pointed to Henry, who was smoking. Henry jumped up at once and smiled awkwardly. "Hi Thea, I'm Henry. I grew up at the orphanage with James. After he was enlisted, I took up medicine." Thea did not suspect a thing. She believed what they said. She was worried though. Had she asked for too much with her request for 10% of the shares? Eternality was the Callahans' main business, but they also ran other businesses in other industries, including food and beverage and hospitality. All those assets were worth billions in total. As 10% was a substantial amount, she was worried that grandfather would not agree to it. The only thing she could do now was wait. Soon, Howard returned to Common Clinic. Alone this time, he had the transfer agreement for the shares with him. Thea, Dad has signed the agreement. Once Benjamin signs here, he will own 10% of the family's shares. Now that you have the transfer agreement, could you call Alex and tell him to resume the partnership with Eternality? Thea studied the agreement carefully. Once she verified that it was authentic, she cheered in joy. Jamie, grandfather has agreed. Yes. Finally, my dad will have some standing. Thea, please call Alex. The trucks are at Eternality taking the materials away. Once we get this out of the way, we can celebrate properly later, Howard said. Thea looked at James. James nodded, saying, call him. Should I? Thea was nervous. Alex owed James a favor after all, not her. James said, of course. Go for it. Thea made the call and explained the situation to Alex. He did not hesitate, and the partnership was back on just like that. Listening to the conversation, Howard heaved a sigh of relief as they reached an agreement. Even though he had to give up 10% of the shares, the funds would multiply as long as they had the partnership with Eternality. The Callahans' business would boom again in no time. Thea, Dad will be turning 80 in 10 days. Remember to drop by then. I'll be going now, Howard said before driving away. Jamie, let's go home and tell Dad the good news. Thea dragged James behind her. James was content seeing Thea so happy. He went home with Thea. The door was closed. Thea was extremely nervous as she held the contract. Softly, she knocked on the door. Soon, the door opened. A pretty woman in her 20s wearing a dress and sandals stood there. She was David's wife, Alyssa Myers. Alyssa looked disgusted. Resentfully, she said, why are you here? Dad and Mom don't want to see you. Just leave. She shut the door with a slam. David's voice rang out. Alyssa. Who was that? Alyssa said, nobody. David knew that it was Thea immediately. He opened the door and saw her holding a contract, tears pooling in her eyes. He pulled her in and said, come in, Thea. Dad and Mom are out. Quickly, Alyssa stepped in front of David. Coldly, she said, David, what are you doing? If Mom finds out that you let her in, you can forget about the money for your car. David was home for 2 reasons. First, he was there for his parents since the family was in trouble. Second, he knew that Gladys had just gotten an extra $2 million. As he was thinking of upgrading his car, he was back to bug Gladys for money. It was actually the money James was given to leave Thea back when he used to pick her up from work. What are you doing here, you cursed girl? Just then, a middle-aged woman with a golden retriever approached. It was Gladys. She looked disgusted when she saw Thea. Mom. Don't call me Mom. I have no such daughter. Thea's eyes were full of tears, but she swallowed them. Instead, she showed her mom the contract. Grandfather has agreed for me to come home. He even gave me a transfer agreement for some shares. Once we sign the contract, we'll own 10% of the shares. I'm here to bring it to Dad. Gladys was out the entire day, so she missed the news. She was unaware of the press conference the chairman of the Celestial Group had held, the fact that Celestial Group had cancelled their partnership with Eternality, and how Thea had leveraged her return to the family against Lex by making him pass 10% of the shares over to them. She froze at Thea's words. Transfer letter for 10% of the shares. What share? Gladys stared blankly at the document Thea held out. Mom, Grandpa wrote this transfer contract, Thea said. He signed it himself. If Dad signs it too, 10% of the family's shares will be his. Gladys promptly snatched the file from Thea's hands and read through the contents carefully. She cheered in delight when she was done, hugging and kissing the contract. Ha ha, it's real, she squealed. It's an actual transfer contract. We finally have 10% of the shares. The old man finally came to his senses. Let me see that, Mom, David said incredulously. Lex held most of the family's shares. The other family members had some, too, but never his immediate family. Gladys happily passed the file to him. Didn't you always want a new car, Davy? Let's get you a brand new one tomorrow. It'll be one that's far more presentable. You'll be the envy of the road. David read through the contract, his face brightening with every line. He turned hurriedly to face Gladys. "Mom, even holding 10% of the shares gets us a considerable amount of money when they hand out bonuses in the future. I'm planning to have a kid, but our place in the city is too small for that. Get Dad to pass me 5% of his share, Mom. I want a new house. There's no rush. Whatever your father has will be yours one day. Mom, I've got my eye on a dress, but it costs tens of thousands of dollars," Alyssa said petulantly, tugging on Gladys's arm. "Our wedding anniversary is coming up in a month. I plan on getting a decent dress for once." "Yes, of course. We'll get you that dress." Gladys was elated. She finally had some of Eternality's shares after years of being shunned. Thea felt joy as she watched how happy her mother was. She hugged James's arm, beaming up at him in gratitude. However, James had noticed how Gladys did not even give Thea a single glance after she took the contract from her. Something compelled him to speak up. "Mom, Thea was the one that got the contract for Dad. Trust you to ruin the mood." Gladys's expression soured. She crossed her arms. "You're a mere servant we brought into our household. You don't get a say in anything. Also, I've raised her for 20 years. Isn't this what she's supposed to do?" "I'm sorry, Mom," Thea said hurriedly, seeing how Gladys had become annoyed. "James didn't mean that. This is indeed what I'm supposed to do." "Whatever. Come in," Gladys said as she entered the house, not wanting to bicker with James while she was still in a good mood. Thea smiled, happy that she finally had her mother's approval. James, however, felt helpless. Thea was too soft on them. She was too desperate to get her family's approval. But, from this, he also saw the years of pain and grievances she had to endure. They started discussing the contract. Gladys even called Benjamin to hurry him home so he could sign it. Soon enough, Benjamin was home. When he learned how Thea had helped him obtain 10% of his family business's shares, he froze in shock. "Thea," he said. "Is this true?" Thea nodded from where she sat on the couch. "It's true, Dad. Grandpa allowed me to return to the family, too." "Ha ha. This is amazing." Benjamin laughed in elation. "Don't be too happy," Gladys snapped, ruining the mood. "You're not the one that earned this. You've been useless your entire life, and you always will be. If it weren't for Thea, you'd never amount to anything in this family." Benjamin hung his head, not daring to retort. The dampened mood was short-lived. Now that Thea had gotten them the transfer contract, the entire family planned to celebrate by having a meal in a nice restaurant. While Benjamin was not considered rich, he was still the company's manager. His salary was considerably high, enough for him to put down a loan for more than $300,000 on a Hyundai. David, too, had a car. The family had bought it for him as a wedding gift. While it only cost them $200,000, it did the job of transporting them just fine. David and Alyssa left in their car, while James and Thea rode in Benjamin's. The family drove downtown to a high-end restaurant. The Gourmand was famous in Kensington. It was the grandest restaurant around, though its establishment was divided into several tiers. The private rooms it had available in order of the most luxurious were diamond, gold, silver, bronze, and black iron. Apart from that, it also had a public hall. Even at the public hall, a meal at the Gourmand costs thousands of dollars. It was peak time, so the public hall was filled with customers. The line they had to wait in was more than 30 people long. Gladys started complaining again. "You're useless, Benjamin. Look at Howard, he's a bronze member at the Gourmand. He doesn't even have to wait when he comes here, he can just walk straight into the private room. And you, some soldier you are. No money, no power. Look at John's son-in-law. Now that's a respectable man. He's a silver member in the Gourmand. Just one phone call from him will send a waiter straight out to welcome him in. Ah, why did my daughter have to marry a poor man?" Gladys kept complaining, her mood soured by the fact that she had to wait for to be served. She kept making jabs at her husband, calling him a disappointment, then insulting Thea's husband for being useless. James was used to her cold sneers, so he just ignored her, not wanting to bother getting into a needless argument. He turned to Thea while they were still in the line. "Wait here, Thea. I'm running to the store opposite here for some cigarettes." "Okay." Thea nodded. James turned and headed toward the grocery store across the street. "Oh, Thea, what's wrong with your face?" a voice said with a strange tone as the Callahans settled into the chairs at the entrance while waiting to enter the restaurant. As Thea turned towards the source of the voice, she saw a woman clad in a skimpy outfit with a face caked with foundation walking towards her, carrying a purse. Belinda. Thea recognized her immediately as her old university classmate Belinda Fraser, daughter of the wealthy Frasers and school belle when they were still studying. Back in university, the boys would flock to her to confess their love for her. As for Thea, she used to be the ugliest woman in her university. Belinda stared at Thea. She had heard of Thea's rise in popularity. Forget having her appearance restored, she had somehow even befriended Alex Yates, the chairman of Celestial Group. She also heard of how Thea had her face sliced open by Trent Xavier. Thea had been hogging the spotlight since she restored her appearance and was even featured in the news and papers. The media even called her the most beautiful woman in Kensington. Belinda grew jealous. Thea was ugly, so why was she crowned the most beautiful in Kensington? Belinda started laughing aloud at the sight of Thea's face wrapped in bandages. This is the most beautiful woman in Kensington. Look, everyone. This is Thea Callahan, the one the media crowned the most beautiful in Kensington. Look at that face of hers. Does she look like the most beautiful woman to you? Belinda's voice attracted some attention. That's Thea Callahan. Thea Callahan, the chairwoman of the Eternality. Doesn't look like her. She's not as pretty as she is on the news. I heard she's Alex Yates's sugar baby. I don't think I'd want her if someone paid me to take her. More unpleasant words reached her ears. Thea was angry. She had never interacted with Belinda before. Even back in university, the most they had been were classmates, yet here she was humiliating her. I don't think I've ever done anything to you, Belinda, she snapped. Why are you trying to humiliate me? Belinda stepped forward and yanked Thea's bandages away when she let her guard down, revealing the cuts on her face that were still in the process of healing. Ha ha. Belinda laughed heartily, bending over while pointing at Thea's face. Look, guys. This is it. The most beautiful woman in Kensington. The Callahans may have been sitting right beside Thea, but all they did was look away, afraid that others would find out they were related to her. Gladys even moved her chair as far away as she could. She definitely did not want people to know she was Thea's mother, since it would have been embarrassing. Thea started to panic when her bandages were ripped off. She lowered her head, afraid of meeting the crowd's gaze. Thea had been the object of ridicule for 10 years. Every time she stepped outdoors, her face would be hidden under a veil. She thought she was used to this. But right now, the crowd's words pierced into her like knives. She kept her head lowered, not daring to meet the onlookers' gazes. Self-hatred started rising inside her. This is it. I wouldn't want her even if you paid me. The most beautiful woman in Kensington. The media must have been blind when they said that. Thea may have been staring at the ground, but she could vividly picture the sneers that were on the crowd's faces. It was too much to bear. The lump in her throat grew, and a tear fell from her eyes. Belinda was pleased with Thea's reaction. She lifted Thea's chin, staring at the scabbed overcuts on her face that were still in the process of healing. Such a beautiful face, Belinda said with a laugh. What a pity. Ha ha. What are you doing? Thea jerked herself out of Belinda's grip in a panic and lowered her head again, not wanting to meet the other woman's gaze. Smack. At that moment, she heard a loud slap. Thea, head still pointed at the floor, watched as a pair of strong arms held onto her. She looked up at James, and all the grievances she had felt up till that point overwhelmed her. She threw herself into his arms and started sobbing. You hit me. Belinda pointed a finger at James, her other hand holding her still stinging cheek. You worthless garbage. Do you know who I am? I'm Belinda Fraser. James let Thea go, stretching out an arm to grab Belinda's finger. Ow. Belinda's face scrunched up in pain. Kneel and apologize, James said coldly. The crowd grew. Some of them took their phones out and started recording. Belinda's finger hurt so much that she couldn't get even a word out. James tightened his grip slightly. Belinda bent over as her finger was lowered. James kicked the back of her knee, sending a wave of pain through her as she was made to kneel on the ground. There was a thud as her knee met the floor. The pain was too much for her. She fell over, wailing in pain. Thea got flustered at the sight. Jamie, she's part of the Frasers. They're one of the Great Four. We can't afford to cross them. James ignored Belinda still lying on the ground as he turned to look at Thea, his cold expression turning into one of warmth. Sorry. Smack. A slap met James's head. It was Gladys. She had planned on not getting involved, but James hit one of the Frasers. The last time Thea crossed the Xaviers almost destroyed their entire family, and now James had crossed the Frasers. Who told you could do that? She snapped viciously at James. Go help Miss Fraser up and apologize to her. David and Alyssa hurried over to Belinda and helped her up. However, Belinda's knees were injured, staining her flesh-toned stockings red with her blood. They helped her into a seat. Belinda's face was still contorted in pain. She pointed at the Callahans, venting her frustrations on them. Do you know who I am? I'm Belinda Fraser, I swear. Your family is done for. Smack. Gladys smacked James again at Belinda's words. Kneel in front of her and apologize, she snapped. Thea was afraid. The ordeal the Xaviers had put her through was still fresh on her mind. She never wanted to cross one of the Great Four ever again. She bent down to kneel. However, James pulled her back up. This doesn't concern you, Thea, he said simply. I was the one that hit her. She can come at me if she wants. I won't let this affect the Callahans. Come at you. All right. Belinda's temper flared at his words. She took her phone out and called the manager of the Gourmand. Mr. Thomas. It's Belinda Fraser, gold member at the Gourmand. Someone hire me right outside your restaurant. I need some of your security guards. Now. Belinda glared at James as she hung up. You're dead meat. I'm not letting you off, even if you knelt down and begged me to. I'm breaking both your legs today, or my name isn't Belinda Fraser. Gladys rushed forward to try to appease her. I'm really sorry, Miss Fraser. This is all my good-for-nothing son-in-law's fault. I'll apologize for him, so please forgive us. Just treat us like a fart. Gladys was terrified. Getting a portion of the family's shares was a once-in-a-lifetime feat. She definitely wanted to avoid angering Lex into taking it back because they had crossed the Frasers. Belinda turned her nose up, then jabbed at Gladys's nose while she was still bent over in a bow. You're not even a fart. I want you to kneel before me and lick my shoes. No, you're not worthy of doing that. I want Thea to do it. Belinda changed her mind at the last moment and pointed to Thea, who had been standing to the side helplessly. At that moment, a middle-aged man walked out of the restaurant with several guards in tow. The people crowded outside the Gourmand knew right then that the Callahans were finished. David went pale at the electric batons in the intimidating guards' hands and pulled Alyssa into the crowd, afraid that they would end up being involved. Seeing that the manager was here with his guards, Belinda's expression turned even more smug. She sneered coldly at Thea, then spat on the floor. She pointed at the ground. Get on your knees and lick it clean, Thea, and I promise I'll spare his legs and only break your worthless husband's hands. Gladys trembled as the guards approached. She kneeled instantly and begged for forgiveness. Please let us go, Miss Fraser. It'll never happen again. James ignored Gladys as she knelt. He held nothing but disdain for her. She was a coward who only knew how to push the weak around, but was terrified of anyone stronger than she was. Jamie. Thea, now afraid, held onto James's arm. It's all right, James said in a reassuring tone. Belinda kicked the groveling Gladys aside, her temper flaring once again at James's nonchalance. She pointed at him. That's him, Mr. Thomas. I want him dead. Thea rushed over to Gladys, helping her up. Don't touch me, you parasite. Gladys flung her arm outwards and slapped Thea away. She scanned the crowd for Benjamin but found him standing in the distance with his head down, not even daring to make a sound. Gladys wept, lamenting the fact that she married a loser of a husband. The manager of the Gourmand side-eyed James, noticing that he was the son-in-law of the Callahans who had been making waves around Kensington. Get him, he ordered. Who dares? A voice rang out at that moment from within the Gourmand. The sound of a pair of heavy boots thumping against the ground followed suit. The crowd turned towards the source. A middle-aged man in full military uniform approached, followed by 4 fully armed men. 5 stars shone brightly on the man's shoulder. The Gourmand's manager, Neil Thomas, went pale when he recognized who the man was. His strength left his legs, and he kneeled on the ground. The security guards too felt their strength leave their bodies. They kneeled as well. This was one of the most important people in the country. Forget Neil, even the owner of the Gourmand would have to kneel before him. Recently, the 5 militaries had been reorganized, and Kensington became its base of operations. The one standing before them was the new commander-in-chief. The leader of the 5 armies that had been integrated into one, the Blythe King of the West. The Blythe King of the West. Commander of the army on the western border. He was a man above all, a figure with near unparalleled power. His aura emanated powerfully as he approached. The outside of the Gourmand was quiet as everyone held their breaths. This was the Blythe King, the new commander-in-chief of the 5 armies. They had only ever seen him on screens. Now that he was here in person, they were so shocked at the sheer command his presence demanded that they did not dare to even move. Neil and the security guards remained on the ground, trembling slightly. Gladys had been sobbing on the ground but went quiet when she saw the Blythe King, not daring to even breathe too loudly. She had seen the news. She knew this was someone even more terrifying than Trent Xavier was. Belinda, too, held her breath in fear. Everyone was intimidated. Only James seemed calm. He had met the Blythe King once, back when he was appointed commander. Surprise flashed across the Blythe King's face when he spotted James. Dragon, he started, but stopped abruptly at James's gaze. Instead, he glanced around, piecing the pieces together. He looked at Neil, who was still kneeling on the ground. What's going on? It's nothing, Chief Marshal. Ads by PubFuture. The Blythe King did not need an explanation to figure out what was happening. This area is under my jurisdiction. You are forbidden to disturb the peace. If this happens again, there will be serious consequences. Leave. Yes, sir. Neil rolled away like a ball, not daring to linger. The security guards rolled after him. At that moment, several jeeps stopped in front of the restaurant. The Blythe King cast another glance at James but said nothing. He got into one of the jeeps and they drove away. The crowd outside the Gourmand let out a collective sigh of relief. Was that the new commander-in-chief of the 5 armies? His presence was so overpowering. I felt like I had a boulder pressed on my chest as soon as he approached. I couldn't breathe normally. The Blythe King was the commander on the Western Front, and now he's the leader of all 5 armies. He holds the most power out of anyone. He's like the big shot of all big shots. What a powerful man. Restlessness returned to the Gourmand when the Blythe King's car disappeared from view. Belinda did not dare cause more trouble. She was lucky that the Blythe King had not pinned any blame on her, or her entire family would be done for. This isn't over, James. Thea. Just you wait. Ads by PubFuture. Belinda limped away after leaving a final word, her appetite ruined. Thea came back to her senses and looked in the direction where the jeeps had gone, lost in thought. So that's the Blythe King of the West. He's a lot more domineering than he is on TV. However, what she did not know was that her husband was someone not even the Blythe King could compare to. You bastard. You didn't even dare let out a fart when everything went down. It's so embarrassing being married to you. Gladys once again started shrieking outside the Gourmand. She yanked Benjamin's ear, but he dared not make a sound. Thea felt like she had to say something. Mom, people are watching. Stop picking on Dad. This is all your fault, you cursed little bitch. How the hell do you manage to offend everyone no matter where you are? You're lucky the Blythe King was here, or we'd have been done for. Gladys raised her hand to slap Thea, but James reached out and caught her arm. How dare you block me, you punk. Gladys punched James in the head, enraged. James did not retaliate. Even if Gladys was irredeemably flawed, she was still Thea's mother. He just did not want Thea to get hit. That was all. Mom, please stop hitting him, Thea pleaded, pulling Gladys back. David finally returned, pulling Alyssa along. You almost doomed us all, James, he said, displeasure clear on his face. We were lucky. If it weren't for the Blythe King having dinner here and coming outside when he did, you'd definitely have broken legs right now. The rest of us would have been dragged into your mess, too. You're nothing but a burden, Alyssa said in disgust, staring at Thea's injured face. Enough, dear. People are watching. We can talk about this back home, David muttered carefully to her. As for Gladys, she stopped caring. She had humiliated herself when she knelt for Belinda earlier. Benjamin was about to say something when Gladys beat him to it. Oh, now you want to talk. What were you doing earlier on, cowering in the corner? It's so embarrassing being your wife. I want a divorce. There was a crowd at the Gourmand's entrance. However, none of them were interested in their family argument. Their minds were still on the Blythe King. The Blythe King's succession ceremony is in 5 days. Oh, yes. I heard that it'll be held at Kensington's military region. Apparently, the ceremony will be open to the public, but only the most powerful and influential people will receive an invitation. That's what I heard too. Only the true upper-class families who are rich and powerful enough will be able to attend. Ah, I bet the only people who will get invited are the celebrities. Everyone was busy talking about the Blind King. Not James though. He sat on a chair outside the Gourmand, smoking a cigarette. To save her family, Gladys had embarrassed herself thoroughly. She even knelt to Belinda. After lashing out at her family, she calmed down a little. Gladys, is that you? You're here too. Benjamin and his family were waiting in line to enter the Gourmand when a voice rang out. Gladys looked up. A pretty, well-kept woman approached, holding the arm of a man in a suit and tie. A young couple followed them. Ads by PubFuture. Felicia. Gladys stood up. She was surprised as she surveyed the woman before her, who still looked like she was in her 20s. She asked, "Are you Felicia Lockwood? The same Felicia who sat behind me in class?" "That's right. Gladys, it really is you. I haven't seen you in years. My, your social standing seems to be deteriorating, isn't it? Once upon a time, you were the school belle. I thought you'd marry rich. Who knew you'd end up this way, even having to wait at the Gourmand?" Felicia glanced at Gladys, her hand still on the man's arm. "This is my husband, the chairman of Lucky Logistics. He has a net worth of tens of millions. What about you? Where's your husband? What does he do?" Gladys knew that Felicia was showing off. She jerked Benjamin toward her, holding her head high. "This is my husband, Benjamin Callahan, a 10% shareholder of Eternality. The Callahans have a net worth of billions, while my husband is worth millions." Since Benjamin had become a shareholder of Eternality, Gladys was finally able to enjoy some social standing. Glancing at Felicia out of the corner of her eyes, she felt more and more gleeful. Felicia looked surprised. "Wow, really? Eternality's shareholder, EH. Then why are you still waiting in line? Aren't you a member?" "Oh, I know. You were just boasting, weren't you?" The man next to her said. "Fel, I have a lot of work to do today. Hurry up, let's go. I have to be in the office again later on." Felicia saw Gladys' expression shift. Immediately, she knew that Gladys was just boasting. Years ago, Gladys was the school belle. Though Felicia was pretty as well, she was only a wallflower in Gladys' presence. Now that she had done better in life than Gladys, she was not going to pass up the opportunity to gloat. She grabbed a cute-looking girl from behind her. "This is my daughter. You know who the Wilsons are, right? She married a Wilson." Ads by PubFuture. The young man beside the girl tossed his head, putting his arm around the girl smugly. "The Wilsons are doing okay, I guess. We're only worth tens of billions and we rank the third among the great four in Kensington." Gladys was speechless. She glared at Thea viciously. Thanks to Thea, Gladys could not even look her classmate in the eye. Thea hung her head, keeping her gaze firmly on the floor. "Gladys, this must be your daughter. It's Thea, right? We saw you on the news." "Oh, I heard that your daughter married some nobody. All he does is cook and pick Thea up from work with an electric motorcycle. Oh, she's disfigured again now." Sensing another opportunity to attack Gladys, Felicia took it. She kept putting Thea and James down whilst complimenting her own daughter and son-in-law. David and Alyssa kept quiet in the face of these insults. Their family was nothing compared to the others. Gladys was so embarrassed that she wanted nothing more than to hide. Even after obtaining the shares, it still was not enough. She glared at James, who was still smoking in his seat without a care in the world. She hated him with a vengeance. It was him who affected her social standing. After watching this play out, James felt like he had no choice. As Thea's husband, he did not want to be an embarrassment to her or her parents. He called Henry immediately. "Make a reservation for the diamond room at the Gourmand. Make sure it's under Thea's name." After that, he stood up and approached Gladys. "Mom, didn't we make a reservation for the diamond room? Let's go in." Felicia burst out laughing. "Haha, the diamond room. What a joke." Her husband looked unimpressed as well. "Boy, do you even know what the diamond room is? You're taking this ruse too far." Chad Wilson, Felicia's son-in-law, sneered at James. "Even as a member of the Wilson family, I'm only a silver member. That means I'm just entitled to the silver room. And you're saying you have a reservation for the Diamond Room. In Kensington, there are only a handful of people who have access to the Diamond Room. Several people were waiting outside the Gourmand. They were all queuing up to enter the restaurant. Before this, they were discussing the Blythe King. After they heard what James said, the crowd erupted in titters. The Diamond Room. Looks like the Callahans' son-in-law is good at something after all boasting. He's a nobody. He can't even afford a car. Remember how he used to pick Thea up from work with an electric motorcycle? If he can't even afford a car, how can he afford the Diamond Room? Rumor has it that it's not enough to be rich to use the Diamond Room. The Gourmand's owner hails from an important family in the capital. He's from a true upper-class family. Hardly anybody in Kensington could secure a reservation for the Diamond Room. Not even the Great Four could get access to the Diamond Room. James's words were a joke to them. Their jeers angered Gladys once more and she rounded on him. "You idiot. Haven't you done enough?" "Hush, Jamie." Thea put her hand on James. As someone who was born and bred in Kensington, she was familiar with the origins of the Gourmand and the significance of the Diamond Room. Ads by PubFuture. "Chad, where's your silver member card? Show it to these poor folks here. Allow them a glimpse of the silver member card." Felicia stuck her nose up in the air and looked at Gladys disdainfully. Gladys went pale. Felicia was ecstatic noticing how uncomfortable Gladys was. Chad whipped out a pure white card. Shiny and exquisite, it featured a silver VIP stamp. "Wow, so this is a silver member card. I've never even seen it before. The Wilsons live up to their reputation. Apparently, you have to spend $1 million at the Gourmand to be upgraded to a silver member card. Spending $10 million and above entitles you to a gold member card. As for the diamond member card, it's priceless. Only those hand-picked by the Gourmand's owner will receive a diamond member card from him personally." As if it wasn't enough to be handsome and dashing, Chad Wilson is rich and young too. Whoever marries him is lucky indeed. Hearing all the praise, Felicia was smugger than ever. Gladys, on the other hand, grew even unhappier. The whole matter was almost forgotten, but James had embarrassed her yet again with his stupid question. "Let's just go, you idiots." Ads by PubFuture. Under admiring gazes, Felicia looped her arm through her husband's and entered the Gourmand. As she left, she threw out another cutting remark. 10% of eternality. All of Kensington knows that Benjamin Callahan is useless. The set is complete with a useless husband, an ugly daughter, and a useless son-in-law. Haha, this is hilarious. All the Callahans paled. Gladys in particular looked the worst. Reputation and image were everything to her. Thea looked at her mother's stony face and hid behind James. Just then, they heard a set of hurried footsteps approaching. A tall, handsome man looking to be in his 20s wearing a white shirt made his way toward them. Oh my God, it's the Gourmand's owner Brian Grayson. He's so low profile yet commanding. I've heard that Brian hails from the capital. Ever since he set up the Gourmand in Kensington, he's barely made any appearances. Nobody knows anything about him. Several young women looked like they were about to fall at his feet, handsome as he was. This was true wealth and power. How could the Great Four even compare? After the call he had just received, Brian dared not waste a second. He saw Felicia's daughter, Emily Wilkins. Mistaking her for Thea, he bowed to her respectfully. "My apologies. I have kept you waiting for far too long. The Diamond Room is ready. This way, please." "What?" Everyone at the Gourmand was utterly shocked. The Wilsons are a great family indeed. Even the Gourmand's owner is here to greet them in person. You're right. The Wilkins are so lucky. They have such a dutiful daughter who married a Wilson. Chad and the Gourmand's owner must enjoy a special friendship. Felicia and her family were dumbfounded hearing what the crowd said. Chad was confused as well. What was going on? He had only made a reservation for the Silver Room, and he had never seen the Gourmand's owner before either. Why was he here in person? However, thinking that he had managed to command the attention of the Gourmand's owner, Chad turned gleeful. He lifted his chin and put an arm around Emily, enjoying the admiring glances from the crowd. Felicia was more arrogant than ever. She even turned around to look at Gladys purposefully, letting out a haughty HMPH. Gladys was enraged. She blamed James for all of this, the useless worm. "You piece of trash. Look at them. Look at the company they keep. Even the Gourmand's owner is here to greet them in person," Gladys yelled at James, who frowned slightly. Henry never made mistakes. What was going on? He looked at Brian, who was still bent over. Understanding flashed in his mind. Brian must have gotten the wrong person. As Felicia and her family were just entering the restaurant, he must have mistaken Emily for Thea. Loudly, he announced, "Thea, we're not eating here anymore. Let's go." Ads by PubFuture. After that, he grabbed Thea and walked off. Still standing by the entrance, Brian heard the name and jolted upright. He looked up to see James and Thea turning away. He shuddered and slapped himself. In his haste, he had made a mistake. Hurriedly, he caught up with them and stopped in front of Thea. Respectfully, he asked, Are you Miss Thea Callahan?" "Huh." Thea was stunned. Dumbly, she nodded. "I am. Miss Callahan, the diamond room is ready. Please come with me." The tables turned so quickly that no one knew what was going on. They were all in shock. Gladys, Benjamin, David, and Alyssa were staring, their mouths agape. They had never seen the Gourmand's owner before, but they knew that he was not from Kensington. A real big shot, he was from the capital. Ads by PubFuture. Mr. Grayson, did you just say that the diamond room is ready for Thea?" Gladys asked uncertainly. "Madam, you must be Thea's mother. This way, please." "Waiter, what are you doing? Welcome our guests." Following Brian's shouts, several waiters appeared at once, arranging themselves into 2 neat rows and bowing to them. "Welcome." Their voices sounded as one, ringing loudly in the restaurant. "Guards, throw these people out." Brian looked at Felicia and her family, who stood rooted at the entrance. They had caused him to slip up. He had never seen the Black Dragon before, but he had no intention of disobeying the Black Dragon's commands. The room was for Thea. If he offended Thea, his life would be over. A team of security guards appeared and started to drive Felicia and her family away. The crowd bore witness to the scene. Gladys finally smiled. Even though she did not know what was going on, she was happy as long as Felicia suffered. She watched as Felicia and her family were banished. She doubled over in laughter and pointed at Felicia. "Haha, what a joke. The diamond room. You're not worthy." It was astonishing how quickly the tables turned. Felicia, Chad, and their family were now barred from the Gourmand. Felicia was still determined to find a way in. She grabbed Chad, saying, "Chad, you're from the Wilson family. You have a member card. Show it to him." Chad approached Brian once more with resignation, holding out his silver member card. "Mr. Grayson, I'm a silver member of the Gourmands. Over the years, I've spent a few $1,000,000. Beat him up." Chad's untimely approach ticked Brian off as he was busy talking to Thea. A few menacing security guards beat Chad to a pulp. He fell to the floor moaning, "Stop. Please stop. Ha." As soon as she saw this, Gladys' anger abated. She held her head high and puffed out her chest, looking pleased as punch. The Wilkins were boasting all along. "It looks like the Callahans are the ones with real power. Tell me about it." Thea Callahan is friends with Alex Yates. Now, she's reserved the diamond room. Even the owner is here to greet her personally. Everyone started commenting on the matter again. Thea was still confused. She had no idea what was going on. "Miss Thea Callahan, madam, and sir, this way please," Brian repeated. Ads by PubFuture. "Welcome," the 2 rows of waiters said again, kneeling on the ground this time. The waiters were actually beautiful women wearing dresses. The crowd milling about the entrance was shocked. Is this how the Diamond members are treated? This is crazy. There are so many beautiful women kneeling in a row. My heart is breaking for them. The crowd cast envious, jealous gazes at the Callahans. Finally, Gladys was able to enjoy her moment in the spotlight. David straightened up. Alyssa placed her arm on David's, lifting her chin. At that moment, they felt like they were on top of the world. Thea was still confused. She did not know Brian Grayson at all. "This way, Miss Thea Callahan. Welcome." The waitresses kneeling on the ground intoned as one again. "Come on, Thea." James looked at a bewildered Thea. Ads by PubFuture. Thea finally responded to him. With Brian leading the way, the Callahans entered the Gourmand. They went up to the 5th floor using a private elevator. Furnished with opulence, the 5th floor looked more like a palace than anything else. Everywhere they went, beautiful women were kneeling on the ground. David was stunned. He had never seen anything so grand before. Benjamin was staring as well, his jaw slack. Gladys even stopped being gleeful for a second, her mouth hanging open at what lay before her. "Please enter, sirs and madams." Brian opened a door, revealing a private room. The room was a few hundred square meters. It featured a few round tables, a lounge, and a dance floor. Sumptuously decorated, one could mistake it for a palace. The Callahans were speechless. "Please enjoy your meal. I'll leave you to it." Brian left as soon as he guided them to the room. The Callahans took their time trying to come up with a response. "Dave, pinch me. Am I dreaming? This is the Gourmand's diamond room. Everyone says that it costs millions to have a meal here." Alyssa was so emotional she could hardly speak. "Dear, what's going on?" Benjamin asked. "What? Me? I don't know." Gladys looked confused as well. She had never even seen anything so grand before. "Jamie, does this have anything to do with you?" Thea looked at James, who was holding her hand. James rubbed his nose. "Me? How could I have anything to do with this? It must be you. The owner came to greet you. But I don't even know him." James smiled. I have no idea what's all this about then. Who cares who he is? Let's eat." "Oh, wait. Let me take a few pictures and post them up. My followers would go crazy." David took his phone out and started snapping pictures of everything. Soon, the food arrived. Beautiful waitresses presented course after course. Whether in terms of presentation, taste, or smell, the food served was extremely appetizing. The tables were soon full of delicious food. Once all the food arrived, a group of women started dancing on the mini stage in front of the room. They were so attractive that Benjamin and David could not take their eyes off them. Throughout the meal, the Callahans were in a state of shock. There was so much food in the diamond room that they could not finish. In fact, they barely ate a fraction of it. "Oh no." Gladys came to a realization after she finished eating, smacking herself in the forehead. "I heard that eating at the diamond room would cost at least $1 million. $1 million won't cut it." James pointed to a bottle of red wine David was opening. "This bottle of wine alone costs $380,000. We've had a few bottles, haven't we? The wine alone would probably cost $1 million. Huh." David shuddered at what James said. Quickly, he stood up. I didn't open them." As soon as Brian left the room, he did some digging about the Black Dragon. He also asked his closest family members for pictures of the Black Dragon when he was made general. Ads by PubFuture. Even though that was a secret, the Graysons were an upper-class family in the capital. Thanks to their status, they still managed to get their hands on some photos. As soon as Brian saw James, he shuddered involuntarily. He almost fainted in his office. "Oh my God. The Black Dragon is Thea Callahan's husband." He dared not take it easy, sprinting to the diamond room at once. Knock knock. Just then, someone knocked on the door. It was Brian, who had a smile pasted on his face. "Thea, sir, madam, and everyone else here, is everything to your liking?" The Callahans looked at each other. It was great when they were bragging outside, but now, they did not have the money to foot the bill. Gladys did have some money, but it was her personal savings. She was not going to use it. "Thea, have you finished?" Brian bowed. Thea was slow to respond. She nodded instinctively. "Why yes. I'm done." Brian produced a card studded with diamonds. With both hands, he presented it to Thea. "Thea, this is the diamond member card. Please accept." "No, I can't." Thea shot out of her seat and waved her hands. Ads by PubFuture. How could she accept? Even though having the Gourmand's diamond member card would do much to elevate her status, it was simply too expensive to dine here. This meal alone was going to cost them everything. Even with a member card, they still would not be able to afford it. Brian bowed again, saying, "Thea, I think you must have misunderstood. This isn't just a normal diamond card. This is a top-tier diamond card. With this card, you'll enjoy a 10% discount storewide. You'll also get to enjoy 3 free meals every month. 3 meals every month, completely free of charge." Huh. Thea's mouth hung open in shock. The other Callahans wore similar expressions. 10% storewide. 3 free meals every month. It was too good to be true. Thea finally came to her senses and asked, "Mr. Grayson, we don't even know each other. Why are you giving me the diamond member card?" Brian glanced at James. James was looking at him as well. He shuddered involuntarily. Quickly, He said, "It's our 5th anniversary today and we've had a lucky draw. You happen to be the lucky winner. Please take the card. This meal is free of charge. Do visit the Gourmand often. Anniversary. Lucky draw." Thea was still in disbelief. Gladys almost burst into tears at the news. Quickly, she walked up to him and took the diamond card from him. "Mr. Grayson, I'll take it on behalf of Thea." Brian happened to see James's expression. He shuddered again. Coldly, he said, "We will only acknowledge Thea as the owner of this card." Gladys was so scared she hurriedly thrust the card into Thea's hands. "Jamie." Thea looked at James. He smiled. "Darling, how lucky are you? What a coincidence. You're the lucky winner on their anniversary. Congratulations. Just take it." Thea finally took the card.
After finishing their meal at the Gourmand, the Callahans left in a daze. Belinda had ripped the gauze off Thea's face. After leaving the Gourmand, James took Thea back to Common Clinic, where he started to prescribe some medicine for her again. Thea sat down, looking at the VIP card that was made of diamonds. Then, she looked at James, who was absorbed in his task. She was dazed. Whatever happened today still felt surreal. She did not know Brian Grayson. Yet Brian Grayson had given her a diamond card. The diamond card had several privileges, including a 10% discount and 3 free meals every month. How was it different from eating for free? Soon, James had come up with a concoction. "Thea." "Yeah." Thea jerked back to reality. James said, "Come on. Let's apply some medicine to your wounds. I'm sorry for what happened today. You only got humiliated because I left. I promise it won't happen again. It's okay." Thea was used to it. She turned her face to him. "Let's do it." James applied the medicine to her face before bandaging it. Only after that did James take Thea home. Ads by Pub Future. In the living room at Benjamin's house. This time, Gladys was all smiles, treating Thea with much warmth. She served Thea tea and water, attending to her as if she was a princess. Benjamin hugged the transfer agreement to his chest, grinning stupidly. "Thea, tell me, what's your relationship with Brian? He's a rich, influential young man from a powerful family in the capital. Did you get to know him when you had your pretty looks? If so, divorce James when you recover your looks once more. Marry Brian instead. I'll be so proud and excited to have such a powerful son-in-law." Gladys had a yearning look on her face. She was still thinking about how much power Brian had. He even had the authority to rough up a member of the Wilson family. How cool was that? If he became her son-in-law, she would be laughing in her dreams. "Mom, I don't know him." Thea was exasperated. She was still trying to figure out why Brian had treated her the way he did. She suspected that James had something to do with it. After all, Celestial partnered up with Eternality because of him. However, James told her that only happened because he had saved Alex's life when he was a soldier. Now, James was saying that he did not know Brian at all. Alyssa got jealous as she saw how warm Gladys was toward Thea. She grabbed David and said, "Come on, let's go to our room." Ads by Pub Future. "Thea, show me the Gourmand's diamond card. Let me take a good look at it. I haven't seen it before." Resignedly, Thea showed it to her mom. Gladys took it and inspected it from all angles. TSK, it's made from real diamonds. It's so heavy. This card must be worth a fortune. Thank God for you, Thea. Even the Gourmand's owner came to greet you himself. I'll be the talk of the town for a long time because of this. I'll finally be able to gain some standing in my own family too. James looked resigned as well. From a different perspective, he understood Gladys. She had married an unambitious husband. Her daughter used to be completely disfigured. It was a miracle she escaped having a mental breakdown. Even though she knelt to Belinda, it was for the family. At any rate, she was better than David and Alyssa, who slipped away as soon as they discovered that something was wrong. And then there was Benjamin, who was so scared that he could not utter a single word. That was tough for Gladys. He shook his head slightly. Thanks to the shares and the diamond card, Thea's social standing improved in the family. Gladys stopped calling her useless and a curse. After getting Gladys' approval, Thea was happy. Over the next few days, James stayed at home with Thea. He only accompanied her for medicine adjustments when it was required. The medicine he used was expensive and precious. Furthermore, he was concocting it himself, and the effects were marvelous. 3 days later, Thea removed the gauze. All her wounds had recovered, leaving no scars at all. Thea stood in front of the mirror, looking at her perfect face. She was shocked. James had told her over and over again that she would recover, but she was still surprised. His medical skills were nothing short of miraculous. "Jamie, you are amazing. There are no scars at all even though my face was badly injured." James smiled. "I can't take credit for it. It was all Henry. He taught me everything I needed to know." Thea touched her smooth face. "This formula will be so popular if the public learns of it. Can you imagine marketing this product at a beauty salon? Business would be booming." James said, "Henry doesn't care about fame and fortune. All he wants is to live an ordinary life." Thea pressed her lips into a line. How odd. How could he not like money? Knock, knock, knock. Someone knocked on the door. "Thea, what are you doing?" "The old man has called for a family meeting. He told us to be punctual. If he gets angry and revokes our shares because we are late, I won't forgive you." Gladys shouted through the door. "Mom, I am almost ready. Give me a few more minutes," Thea said as she searched for something to wear. "Jamie, what should I wear?" Ads by Pub Future. James sat on the bed, looking at Thea. Thea was wearing a thin dress that was slightly translucent. It showed off her excellent figure, especially her long legs. He said, "You look beautiful in anything." "Oh, come on, help me pick something." "What about the one you're holding?" "This one." "Yeah, okay. Wait for me outside while I get changed." Thea blushed and pointed at the door. Even though they were legally married and James was staying with her, Thea slept on the bed while James took the floor each night. James initiated it. This had become their habit since day one. Thea may have been James' wife, but they had only held hands. They had not even kissed yet. Ads by Pub Future. James was back to repay Thea. He would not force her into anything she did not want. He would not touch Thea without her consent. Now, as Thea requested that he leave, he agreed without any argument. He waited in the living room for a few minutes. Soon, Thea emerged from the room. "Wow, sis, you've recovered from your injuries." David's eyes shone as he took her in. Alyssa looked envious. She envied Thea's beautiful looks and her perfect body even more. "Thea, what?" Gladys was stumped. For the past few days, Thea's face was wrapped in gauze. Gladys had not paid much attention to it. Now that the gauze was removed, there were no traces of injuries or scars. It was amazing. Thea wore a form-fitting white dress and a pair of red heels. Her hair hung loosely over her shoulders. Thanks to her lean body, she exuded elegance. She smiled. "Jamie did it." Gladys glanced at James and mumbled, "Looks like he's not completely useless. He's slightly skilled in medicine." James smiled but did not say anything. Slightly skilled. Everyone knew about his medical prowess. The rich and powerful in the capital fawned over him for two reasons: his status and his medical skills. "Since you were trained in medicine, you could probably earn some income by setting up a clinic." Gladys looked at James shrewdly. Even though she did not like him much, she conceded that he looked alright since he was tall and robust. "Mom, why is grandfather calling for a family meeting?" Gladys said, "It's about the Blythe King's succession ceremony. Rumor has it there'll be some seats available to the public. Dad wants to use this opportunity to cement our status as an upper-class family, so this meeting is a brainstorming session for us to get a seat." In the foyer of the Callahans' villa, gathered were 3 generations of the Callahans and some of their more important relatives. The 5 armies were being restructured. The Blythe King of the West Border was dispatched to Kensington, assuming the role of the commander-in-chief of the 5 armies. This sent Kensington and even the 5 regions into a frenzy. The Blythe King's succession ceremony was imminent. This time, the ceremony would be public. There were some seats available, but only the truly rich and powerful would be able to secure them. All the important families in North Kensington, Kensington, South China, Ocean City, and Coastal Heaven were eyeing the seats. All of them wanted to be there. It was the ultimate symbol of wealth and power. Attending the ceremony would indicate that they were truly powerful. According to rumors, the Blythe King's succession ceremony would be held the next day. Apparently, there were only 100 seats available for the public. The rest of the seats belonged to internally approved members only. However, There was no announcement regarding the time of the ceremony yet. Regardless, several families in the 5 regions were trying to get their hands on the limited seats. Lex was one of them. He had dreamed of becoming an upper-class family for so long. As this was an excellent opportunity, he was not passing it up that easily. As such, he called for a family meeting so they could put their heads together. Basically, all the Callahans were there. The only ones still absent were Thea's family. Grandfather, Thea and her family are becoming too cocky. Ever since you gave them the shares, their behavior has taken a turn for the worse. Now, how dare they be late for a family meeting? They're out of control. Howard's son Tommy was trying to stir up trouble again. Howard and his family had been unhappy since Thea requested the shares. To give Benjamin the shares, Lex had taken some of Howard's. Now, Howard had fewer shares than Benjamin. I agree, grandfather. I think giving them 10% of the shares is too much, Megan chimed in unhappily. How dare they request for something so absurd? Is it just because Thea slept with the chairman of Celestial? Sir, I suggest that we revoke Benjamin's shares. They don't even contribute to the family. They don't deserve it. Yeah, over the years, they've lived off us. And now, they want shares. The Callahans took turns voicing their opinion. Wearing a suit, Lex puffed on a tobacco pipe. He did not want to give Benjamin the shares either. Ads by Pub Future. Benjamin was the most useless among his 3 sons. Benjamin's son, David, was the most useless among all his grandchildren as well. However, if he refused, they would lose the partnership with Celestial. As a result, they would lose the opportunity to become an upper-class family. Lex waved a hand. That's enough. I'm not senile. I know what I'm doing. Howard was sitting down to one side, not saying a word. Getting the young ones to slander Thea and her family was his idea. As Lex did not take the bait, he started to scheme again. He wanted the shares back. John and his family remained silent as well. They did not have many shares to begin with, so it made no difference to them. Just then, Thea and her family arrived. Sorry we're late, Dad, Gladys apologized as soon as she stepped in. Everyone looked at Thea and her family. When they saw Thea's face recovered once more, they were shocked. What had happened? It had just been a few days. How had Thea recovered again? At Kensington Hotel, they saw Trent carve up her face with their own eyes. Now the wounds were healed, and there were no scars. No one knew what happened, but they were angry when they saw Thea. To the Callahans, Thea was a jinx. A curse. For the past 10 years, the Callahans were known for having the ugliest woman in Kensington in their family. They became a laughingstock and a complete embarrassment. It was also Thea who put the Callahans in extreme danger last time. Howard slammed his hand on the table and growled angrily, Benjamin, this is too much. How can you be late? Do you think you're greater than us now that you have the family shares? Do you think we deserve to wait for you? I'm sorry, Howard. Benjamin's head hung low as he apologized. Thea came over and said, Howard, it was me who caused the delay. It's not my dad's fault. Howard became even more furious. Thea, don't you understand our rules? Family meetings are of the utmost importance. Just because you have something with the CEO of Celestial Group doesn't mean you can ignore the rules. Yeah, because of you, we almost died at Trent Xavier's hands. Thank God I wasn't home that day, or else I'd definitely be cancelled in Kensington. You jinx, you dare to ask for a 10% share after all that. The Callahans talked over each other as they berated Thea's family. Enough, Lex announced, finally stopping the dispute. James Caden remained silent. He was a son-in-law in this family, so he had to be quiet in order to not attract any more trouble for Thea. Ads by Pub Future. Now that all of the family members were here, Lex commenced the meeting. Tomorrow will very likely be the succession ceremony of the Blythe King. There is word that only 100 seats are available. Think, voice any ideas to get our hands on those seats. Nobody in the hall spoke. How could that be possible? There were so many affluent families in the 5 regions. It would never be their turn as they were of a lower class. Why, are we all mute? I thought you were a talkative bunch. Lex glared across the room before he yelled furiously, look at yourselves. When you were fighting for my legacy, you couldn't be any louder, but all of you hide when it comes to helping your own family. Grandpa, Let Thea go do it, Tommy Callahan, of the third generation of the Callahans suggested. Thea is Alex's lover. She can go sleep with him once more. With his influence, it wouldn't be hard to get us a seat. Thea was always obedient. She never spoke back against any of her family members' opinions. Nevertheless, this angered her. She pointed at Tommy with a trembling finger as tears welled up in her eyes. Tommy, don't speak of me like that. Am I lying, though? Tommy bat an eyelid of annoyance at her. You must have had sex with Alex for him to treat you so well. Heck, he even cancelled the business deal with us because of you. You. Thea's chest heaved heavily out of disbelief. She could not even speak a word. However, Benjamin did not say anything. Gladys wanted to say something but she did not know how, as she was also uncertain whether Thea slept with Alex. James stepped towards Tommy. Ads by Pub Future. This caught Tommy by surprise. What are you doing? James, watch yourself. This is the Callahan mansion. Tommy had his reasons to fear James, especially when the man was tall, strong, and loaded with military experience. However, being in a Callahan property gave him confidence. I'm not wrong. Alex was only good to her because they had sex. Smack. James gave him a loud slap across the face. Oh. Tommy held his face as he cried in agony. He snapped his head at Lex and screamed, Grandpa, look at him. He hit me at a family meeting. You have to let this man go. Lex fixated his eyes on James, looking cross. Thea tugged on James's hand and whispered, James, apologize. Although James was helping her and that made her happy, this was still a Callahan family meeting. His behavior was clearly violating their family rules. You violent scumbag. How dare you attack my son? Dad, he's acting all cocky because he has some shares. You have to make him leave our family, and revoke Benjamin's shares, Tommy's mother, Jolie Loretta blurted. Yes, make him leave, and revoke Benjamin's shares. Such arrogance. What do you see the family rules as? Do they look like a joke to you? You are disrespecting the head of the family. The Callahans raged. Tommy was the eldest grandson in the family, that was why everybody spoke up for him when he was attacked. In the heat of the moment, James became the public enemy, and so did Benjamin's family. Once again, Thea was the target of the ugliest insults. There were requests for Lex to revoke Benjamin's shares, too. Tommy was elated with all these people on his side. He looked at James with an expression that said, You are just a nobody in the Callahan family. Hitting me was the riskiest move you could make. Lex's face was colored with rage. He was upset about the drama that unfolded during an important family meeting. Ads by Pub Future. Gladys slapped James on his head before he could say anything. UB** kneel down right now. To their surprise, James raised his leg and gave Tommy a solid kick in the gut. It sent him 2 meters away, crashing into the couch and crying, in the most miserable sight. James. Thea was getting scared now. She wanted to kneel and apologize right after that, yet James held her up from the floor. Outrageous. Lex, extremely mad, bolted up from his seat and ordered, You've crossed the line. From now on, you're no longer a son-in-law of the Callahan family. Leave. Say sorry, please. Thea pulled on James's shirt hard. James, apologize now, you piece of trash. Gladys would not stop with the scoldings. She got her share of the family business with her sweat and blood. She was not going to let James anger Lex by hitting Tommy, thus revoking their shares. He isn't worth my apology, James said calmly. You. Lex was shaking and panting from anger. Grandpa, please calm down. Megan held Lex and patted his back to soothe him. Don't waste your energy on a lowlife like him. Let's just make him leave. He must have also been enabled by Benjamin to act with such disrespect. Yeah, someone agreed. Benjamin thinks he's all that after getting his 10%. He isn't respecting you at all. He might be telling people that he's the head of the family now. Gladys looked like she was to explode with anger. She hated James to death. Benjamin, throughout all of this, kept quiet at the side of the room as if it had nothing to do with him. Thea, this place isn't worth us staying. Let's leave together. James pulled Thea's hand, trying to leave. However, Thea was on the verge of crying. She became the ugliest woman in Kensington and disgraced her family. Her only wish was to be accepted by her family. Now, Her only chance to do so was ruined by James. She was thankful to James for saving her appearance. However, she felt nothing but hatred toward James right now. He caused her to be insulted by her family again. This time, she screamed, "James, is it that hard for you to apologize for your mistakes? You are a soldier, not a big shot." When he saw tears welling up in Thea's eyes, James's heart ached.